Alright fellas, you're back at Pokemon Masters, all that stuff. Anyway, here we are back at Pokemon Masters. We got ourselves Sygna Hao and Tapu Koko here at 1 out of 5 without the 6-star EX. Probably should do that. It's not exactly an expensive thing to do, but I'm lazy, so I'm good. I forgot to get the EX roll, so I was like, why has he got the EX roll? Yep, he got it this month. Anyway, so we're going to be looking at Hao again here about a year later, right? He released last May for the Alolan Villain arc, and he's now a year old. And I'd say he's definitely past the age of time. I mean, he's still good, for sure. He was outclassed for the most part on his release because of how good Electric was. And that's not exactly changed. Electric is still stupidly strong and stupidly competitive, so that's still the problem that Hao faces meta-wise, but in terms of overall strength, he is still definitely good, for sure. He's got pretty respectable stats, especially if you give him the 6-star EX, he'll have 370 in the special attack, 440 in the speed, some good health. Good stats in general, right? He's got the biggest aspect of being able to set Electric Terrain and extend it, which is very good, as well as set Fairy Zone, so he's able to set 2 different zones. Very useful. He gives allies special moves next every time a Weather Terrain or zone activates while he's on the field of play from the ally side. So pairing it with a ton of special moves, Weather Terrain Zone Setters will be good for giving a lot of allies physical and special moves next. Definitely not too bad. Team Power Induction, powering up ally moves when in Electric Terrain, giving him more good supportive ability. And also he gets Sync Countdown on the Trainer move whenever he uses it in Fairy Zone. He's also able to buff team speed and debuff enemy speed with his AoE move Wild Electro Web, which is doubled in power under Fairy Zone. So he does have some good supportive aspects to him, as well as damage dealing aspects. He does have the innate multiplier with Electric Terrain activation, and he's got some stuff in the grid that helps out his power, both nuke-wise, DPS-wise, and also utility-wise, with being able to set and extend Electric Terrain, Electric Terrain at 3 out of 5 after the sync move, and also a few other things like Grounding Wire here, Sharp Entry 1 for self-sufficiency, Quick Tempo, Mind Games, all of that good stuff, pretty much just for some more self-sufficiency or more good utility-based stuff. So he's got a lot of good abilities, and I guess we'll be looking at his innermost abilities with him being only 1 out of 5 here. We're going to be seeing what you can get with Hao pretty much the moment you pull him, right? So I've got some battles lined up. Definitely a pretty solid sync pair. Let's go ahead and hop into them. Alright, our first battle here is a free-to-play empowerment video, or I guess battle, whatever, with both Volkners. We got Volkner and Eluxray as well as Volkner and Raichu. Obviously, Lodge Volkner is a good special damage dealer / nuker or whatever, right? And Hao is also, of course, good on that side as well. And he does benefit a ton from Volkner and Eluxray being able to set Electric Terrain, so you don't have to worry about having another Electric Terrain setter. And of course, it will be extended because of how works. Because of the way Hao works, right? Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. Only caveat with this setup specifically is that we don't have max crit, but really that's not really too much to worry about. It's not really that big of a deal for the most part. We go ahead and get on our sync move here. This setup is definitely not too bad because we do have 2 AoE DPS users, so we are going to be doing some very solid spread damage, which is nice, of course. Quad Q, the discharge, also very, very nice as well. Hao does get doubled damage in Fairy Zone on his Wild Electro Web, so it goes from being a 100 base power move to being a 200 base power move, which is definitely very respectable, 100%. And sadly, the only thing about this specific team is that we don't have any more NPR for Fairy Zone, so we don't really get to see the full extent of that power, single target wise, but that's fine. That's not really a problem that needs to be dealt with. Either way, we're able to set up the Electric Terrain again with Volkner and continue to tank with Volkner as well, which of course takes out the necessity of having a support, so that's definitely very nice. Hao does want a support to be able to max out his crit and preferably also max out his special attack as well, but it's also not really needed specifically in this setup here, so it's something really that needs to be worried about all that much for the most part. Either way, this just kind of, I guess, sells the fact that you don't really need crit buffs for the most part in order to be able to easily win a battle, I guess, which is nice, or maxed out crit buffs rather. So yeah, either way, pretty much I guess a free-to-play setup for the most part that Hao's able to empower. Definitely something they could probably take, I would say, could take down Aaron, the Electric Weak stage, right? Being the annoyance that he is, I would say that team could probably handle it relatively well, being mainly special damage dealing, of course, and of course also being pretty good in the power department, right? I would say that it does probably want the half MP taken off so that Volkner at least can max his crit, the Lodge version. But other than that, I mean, it's not really too big of a problem to deal with. either way, Hao's empowerment of other electric type damage dealers is very nice, and of course acting as a side DPS on his own is also a very good aspect that he has. So definitely something that could be respected quite a bit. Very, very nice. Here we are using Hao for our empowerment of Valerie. Being able to power up other fairy characters, not only electric, is very, very nice, and it's a very good part of Hao's kit as well. So don't have to worry much about Valerie here being not the strongest character off the rip, right? Because we can use Hao to kind of make up the difference there. He's able to buff team speed, which is very helpful. Not necessarily in this setup, since we're already using Lodge Morty, who's pretty good on gauges and is able to apply speed buffs himself. So not really a big problem to deal with there. But either way, he's also able to do some dazzling gleam DPS, sure, I guess. But one of the, probably my favorite personal aspects about Hao is that he's able to do the -1 sync countdown on the training move, and mostly due to the fact that his kit is already very oriented towards supportive ability. I do like that he's able to get that -1 sync countdown, so we don't have to worry about quad queuing moves here after the enemy uses their sync move. Though we did do it here, right? But again, I do think that's a good aspect about his kit. We also get ourselves that max crit, max special attack from Morty's support. Able to do some okay damage with Dazzling Gleam. It's not great damage, obviously. I think that much is to be expected. But I mean, it's something that could be relatively respectable, right? Relatively respectable. Also, that -1 sync countdown there ended up mattering because Morty ended up getting KO'd there, so that's nice. Anyway, setting up the Fairy Zone was very useful for getting the special moves next to boost the Draining Kiss damage for Valerie, so we can get the enemy down to KO range. And of course, obviously having the Fairy Zone up is good for activating her nuke as much as possible and getting in the KO here and winning the battle. And obviously finishing them off with a Dazzling Gleam too. Dazzling Gleam can handle on-type damage, but it's really something you should not rely on as your main form of damage. You're definitely going to want another damage dealer, which in this case, literally, we went the most budget as possible by going with Valerie, right? Not too many worse options there. And of course, you could utilize that same strategy with other fairy-type damage dealers, even of obviously better standards. Sygna Suit Wally, Sygna Suit Gladion, you know, New Year's Licia, BP Valerie is a better free alternative. Mina as another free alternative, right? Ton of good characters that can benefit from how just be able to set Fairy Zone and, of course, apply special moves next upon the activation of Fairy Zone, right? So that supportive ability with Hao is very helpful and, of course, good for any fairy team and electric as well, for sure. Third setup here is the double Elisa setup. Very, very nice. And this is mostly to utilize sync countdown abuse, I guess. And also, of course, again, buffing electric allies for sure. Having the damage being AoE is nice because, of course, Elisa is pretty limited to being, classic Elisa is mostly limited to being a single target damage dealer with, or, well, nuker rather, with her high-powered nuke and very, very noticeable lack of actual DPS. So covering sides is definitely a problem for her. So having Hao here apply electric damage AoE is definitely very nice. And of course, powering up her nuke a little bit with applying the speed debuffs is good as well. You know, applying that power play buff as soon as possible. It doesn't really matter too much early on here because we don't crit on the sync move anyway, but that's fine. I mean, that was to be expected for the most part. I wanted to max out Hao's crit so that we could make sure his damage is going to be good because Classic Elise is already able to buff her crit to max anyway with Eagle Eye. It's just a matter of a few turns, right? Probably could have held off a bit on using the max lightning. Probably would have been better to do that anyway, but oh well, that's just how things happen. Happened to happen. Sure, whatever. Got ourselves the special moves next buff there from the Fairy Zone being set up, and of course we're going to be using the Wild Electro Web again here in order to guarantee ourselves the KO against, or not guarantee, but get ourselves a ton of good damage in on the sides after Classic Lisa nukes away the middle, which without even having max crit, quite possible, quite effective. Anyway, plus the special moves next is very good for damaging the Palisade. I forgot these were both Palisands. Funny. Whatever. We're also able to do some Thundershock DPS, surprisingly, right? You know, actually being able to manage some DPS, I guess, here with Thundershock is funny. The burn is definitely very annoying, and we do end up dodging this Earthquake, which I'd say is pretty much crucial to survivability of the team, because I don't think we would have won otherwise. Or, no, sorry, we didn't dodge. We paralyzed the enemy, right? But whatever. That's fine. So, yeah, we got in the win nonetheless. I mean, the ramping was definitely stupidly good there on that team setup specifically. I got a ton of sync countdown in, obviously the Sprint TX roll with Elisa, the -3 from Sygna Suit Elisa, and then the -1 from Hao was all very, very helpful. ton of great sync countdown with these characters, for sure. Definitely something that should not be underestimated or understated, 100%. So, being able to empower other electric characters and do DPS of his own, especially when able to cover another nuker who can't really do too much damage to the sides naturally anyway, is another great part of How's kit, being able to apply that side damage where other characters can. Very, very nice, for sure. And here we are to finish off facing Marshall with a mixed fairy and electric boosting setup, being able to set Fairy Zone for our fairy damage dealer and electric terrain for our electric damage dealer. Pretty effective, I would say. I mean, you're able to use two characters here, two physical attackers that are getting directly buffed, despite the fact that How is mostly a special-based attacker and buffing unit. So it's nice. It does give a little bit more, I don't know, variety, I guess, or in team building that you can make. So you don't really have to worry about How only being limited to buffing special allies. He can work with both, of course. Also, a funny thing about this team is that this setup specifically is able to debuff 4 different stats simultaneously for the most part, with Red being able to debuff physical and special defense, as well as How being able to debuff speed and Marnie debuffing special attack. So that was a little fun, just a little fun nitpick that I noticed. Not nitpick, but you know what I mean. A little bit of information, I guess. So that's cool. Also, all 3 are 1 out of 5, so being able to do a pretty easy win here against these enemies, despite being mostly 1 out of 5, is pretty nice as well. Granted, Marnie is on type. I'm not going to say that I'm ignoring that or anything. But I mean, it's definitely something cool to notice. And obviously could be alleviated by just bringing another alternate damage dealer, right? You can replace Marnie with BP Valor in the situation to pretty much the same effect. I just wanted to bring Marnie anyway for the fact that I don't really use her that much, and also for the fact that the debuffing is funny. Being able to debuff all stats. Anyway, so able to finish off here for... Actually, I don't think the Spirit Break does finish off, yeah. Still does good damage, but doesn't exactly finish off. Either way, doesn't matter that much. Still able to do good enough damage. Yep. Got the Rising Tide as well with Marnie, which is great. How being able to apply speed buffs to the team is very useful. Maxes out Marnie's Rising Tide. Of course, it lets allies get good gauge management. Very, very useful there, too. Especially with Marnie being a 4-gauge move user, you do want to have that extra gauge available to you. So How is very solid at buffing electric and fairy characters, whether they be physical or special. Very solid at activating ally gauge management as well with those speed buffs. That's extremely helpful. He's also got turbocharge 2 in the grid at 1 out of 5, so you do get 20% extra gauge while electric terrain is up. So you will be able to have better gauge management at the start, so you can get your gauge ramped up a little bit with the speed buffs, I guess, later on in the battle, right? Very, very nice. Very, very useful sync pair overall. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that How is one of the best sync pairs in the game, or that he's super duper top tier or anything like that, but he is definitely really solid. You can definitely find a lot of good usage for How in terms of buffing your allies, or of course, you know, making him the focus, the center of attention, with maybe empowering his nuke with extra dupes, like a 3 out of 5 with the EX roll, whatever. How can definitely do good damage that way if you want to make him the big star of the show, but if you want to leave him to the supportive role like I've mostly done in these battles, then you can do that, and he does work pretty well in that role. Not better than necessarily a support character, but being a character that can also do damage, set up terrains and zones, while also being able to do stuff like speed buffing and applying special moves next, and it is extremely helpful, 100%. So glad a character like that does exist among obviously a lot of others, but I'm glad How is still relatively unique in what he's able to do. It's definitely very nice, especially being able to set 2 zones, Fairy Zone and Electric Terrain at once. Very, very nice. But yeah, that's my thoughts about Sygna Suit How and Tapu Koko. Let me know what you think about him down in the comments below. I'll see you all later, and I hope you all enjoyed.